Thank you for joining us for All Things MSP Live. My name is Eric Anthony. I'll be your host tonight, and we really do appreciate you spending some time with us. Now, you may be asking, what is All Things MSP? We are a community, first and foremost, of MSPs and people around the MSP industry, vendors, subject matter experts, all that kind of stuff, and we're talking about the non-technical side of being an MSP. Now, most of our activity happens in our Facebook group. That's the platform that we've been on the longest. You can join us there at facebook.com/groups/all things MSP. There's about 6,000 members in the group, and somebody is there waiting to talk to you. And we also, if you don't do Facebook, we have a LinkedIn company page. So you can go to linkedin.com/company/all things MSP. Now, last but not least, we also have a YouTube channel. So you can head on over there. This is where you can probably get the best experience watching the live stream because it allows us to interact better through the comments there. But also, we publish a weekly podcast there as well, in addition to publishing it to all of your favorite podcast platforms. But we also post other pieces of content as well. So make sure you go there, you like, you subscribe, you do all the things to make sure you get notified so that you'll know when we post new podcasts, as well as we're doing a new live stream. Now, the live stream is typically every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We try not to miss it, but sometimes life happens. Okay, we got about 19 seconds left before we start the show. We'll see you there. The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast are those of its participants and do not reflect the views and opinions of any employer, MSP, sponsor, advertiser, or vendor. Traditional vulnerability management is outdated, disruptive, and costly. Nodeware offers MSPs a better solution. Continuous 24/7 vulnerability scanning, even during business hours, with no network impact. Deploy it remotely via software agents and sensors, eliminating the need for extra hardware and on-site visits, saving you time and money. The multi-tenant dashboard with built-in remediation guidance and patch management makes it easy to identify, manage, and remediate vulnerabilities quickly, helping you better protect your clients. Visit atmsp.link/nodeware to learn more. Welcome back, All Things MSP crew. We are live with another All Things MSP. We haven't done one of these in a couple of weeks, and it's really exciting to get back to them. Really appreciate doing these on Wednesday nights. It's kind of our way to have a more casual experience, and live shows can sometimes go off the rails. So hopefully that will happen tonight because it's more fun. I usually talk about Uncle Marv's live stream about this time, but I don't think he's having one tonight. So you get to go to bed early, I guess, because I know you're an MSP. You have to get up at 4:30 in the morning to be able to get everything done. But tonight is a special episode. If you notice, we only ran one ad at the beginning of tonight's show, and that is because this is a sponsor takeover of the live stream. And tonight's sponsor, of course, being Nodeware. And who else to represent Nodeware better than Mr. Matthew Koenig, who was totally rocking out to the intro music, by the way.
By the way, you put that disclaimer up there just for me, right?
Oh, yeah, just for you.
I saw that.
No, we may have had some, not issues in the past, but things that kind of got a little fuzzy, and I just wanted to make sure we were covered.
Oh, I just figured you made that just for me tonight.
No, you're not the only crazy person in this industry.
Good to know. I thought I was, up there, at least a 10, but hey, I'll take it. So how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. Good like always. Crazy busy, doing a million things at once. It's awesome.
Yep. Same here. Everything's going well. Kids are doing stuff. We're got Channel Pro coming up, and we got CMIT coming up after that, and DattoCon, not that far away, and Team Logic. So yeah, I'll be around.
Yep, I'll be at CMIT and Team Logic myself.
Yeah, I mean those franchise shows tend to be kind of fun because it's it's not your average business owner because they're franchisees, and it's very interesting because a lot of them are business people first rather than technicians first, which is what, we've grown up in this industry experiencing. I mean, that's where I came from. Like, I was a technician turned entrepreneur when I started my break fix. And so, I mean, that, it makes the dynamic just a little bit different, and you're talking to a little bit different crowd at those.
It's fun, and we do a lot of business with both of those franchises, so I like dealing with them. It's fun. You learn. The other nice part is they all talk, so you learn real quick if there's an issue and you can resolve it. And you resolve it for one and you're resolving it for 200, which is always nice because
Right.
the feedback is awesome. So plus I have insiders at each one that'll tell me on the board somebody said this, and I'm like, time to send out an email.
Yep, for sure. And it does work well for vendors because it does allow us to operate at scale, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So anyway, I know, a lot of the content that you and I have been doing here for Nodeware has been around sales. And so I wanted to do this live stream takeover and have a more casual conversation around sales, kind of the state of sales in the MSP industry, because I think it has evolved. I mean, I know it has evolved a lot since I got into it.
It's evolved a ton since I got into it. It used to be you did a lot of selling. Now you do a lot of answering questions. It used to be that you had to educate people from scratch on your product. Now they've done their research and they're coming to talk to you. And it's just been fascinating to me how the industry's gone. I mean, another good one is FUD. Everybody a few years ago, oh my God, you have to scare them, scare your clients. And no, don't scare your clients. It's bad. Stop it. It's definitely been an interesting ride.
Well, I mean, to be fair, and not that I disagree with you, because I think FUD is not a great way to sell, but that was when we were entering this cybersecurity. Everybody was getting hit with ransomware.
Yep.
And it was legit kind of a scary time, right?
Well, it's still legit a scary time.
That's true. It hasn't gotten any better.
Nah. But here's what I find with FUD, and that's why I refuse to give into that. Good news is I did okay during it. I study a lot of psychology, but I do because it's what we do for a living. And one of the things I learned about fear was there are only two things that happen with fear when you try to scare someone. And it's funny, as I've talked about this over the years with different friends of mine that are with vendors, they're like, yeah. The first one is you just piss them off. You try to scare them and they're sitting here going, you're just trying to scare me. You're just trying to freak me out, so I'll buy your product. You just pissed me off. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to deal with you. But the second thing is where it really goes into psychology. When you make someone scared, I mean, truly scared, not like, oh, I should do something. I mean, scared. Well, their body goes into fight or flight mode, right? So what happens with that, which is interesting when I read all about this, is that you stop in your tracks. Now you don't want to make the wrong decision because you're scared the wrong decision will have dire consequences. So You've just entirely stopped your sales cycle, just in its tracks. Then the other problem is when they're ready to make a decision, studies have shown they're going to go to somebody that they trust implicitly, that they feel is in it with them. So if there's a failure, they'll feel it also. Guess who that isn't? You. Because you just sat there and tried to scare it. So basically FUD ends up being, look, there were some people like ID Agent with the dark web that were very successful at it. But if you watched ID Agent, and by the way, nothing against Matt and Kevin, they built a hell of a company and it was a great product. So I'm not saying anything bad. I'm just saying over time, things slowed down from the fear factor. And like the dark web now, kind of like you said, has it gone away? No. Does everybody know their information's out there somewhere? Yeah. So we stopped freaking out about it.
Yeah. And that's one of the problems with fear, right? Is that if it's something really to be afraid of, that's kind of one thing. But if it's one of those things where it's not really a real thing, then you're going to lose that trust that you were talking about earlier. And sometimes it's through almost no fault of your own, because what happens is the fear is real. Like ransomware was real. It was a real thing. We had to protect against it.
Yep.
But then, it became kind of normal to protect against it. Now the only people who got hit were the people who were not taking even the basic, procedures to try and, prevent it from happening.
So what you're saying is stupid people.
Well, yeah, I wasn't going to call them that, but
okay. Well, see, that's why your disclaimer is there.
That's true. And, and some of it is, these are fears that we kind of overreact in the beginning and people just get used to it. They get numb to it after a while.
Yep. Well, the problem also is people didn't talk about business impact. They just tried to scare them.
Right.
They didn't say, okay, so ransomware. Look, it may or may not happen to you, but let me explain the impact to your business if it did, and put them in their head about their own business. Like some of the questions I teach MSPs to ask is, what would it look like if your business had to be down for 60 days while you recovered from a breach? Not Home Depot, Target, look at this. How would it feel? What would your business look like? How would you feel if you had to lay off half your staff because of a breach, because your business started to decrease and you couldn't afford them anymore? So I just always looked at it from a business impact standpoint, not as a fear thing, because you could scare the hell out of them. But the other thing also, if somebody doesn't understand why they should be afraid, kind of like what you said, why am I afraid of this again? I heard money, I heard whatever, but I don't know anybody that's gotten ransomed.
I would think we're at the point now where everybody knows somebody who's been ransomed.
You would think so.
But you're right. Like, it does come down to, okay, what are the facts? What is the business impact going to be if this happens? And it's almost like selling insurance, right? Where you buy insurance because you want to prevent a worst case scenario. You're not afraid. I'm not afraid of getting in my car and driving to the grocery store because I might get in an accident, but it could happen. And I buy insurance to make sure I can recover from that, get my car fixed so I can go to work. Right.
Exactly.
It's kind of a similar thing. And there's a very practical side to it. And so I think that's where the education piece kind of comes in. And the discovery questions like you were talking about.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's it. And that's another thing that's changed, right? It used to be, I have technology, I have these services, I can help you. Okay, great. Or are you the cheapest? Yeah, great. Let's do it. Well, now, first of all, people can't afford to be the cheapest anymore. And those that do are on a race to the bottom. Because when you are the cheapest, they treat you like you're the cheapest. And I love to use this example. If I bought myself a brand new Maybach tomorrow, God knows Nodeware's not buying it for me. But if I, in the channel, except for some really good MSPs, I don't know people buying Maybachs, but let's say I did. I spent $100,000 on a car. And I went and spent $10,000 on some 1986 clunker or whatever like that I was driving around. Here's the question I always ask. Are you going to treat the Maybach differently than you treat that car? Most people would say, Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm going to drive it differently. It's going to get premium fuel. I'm going to get it cleaned regularly. I'm going to do, this one, not so much. I spent a lot less money. I don't care as much.
Right. The Honda Civic, you're going to,
Yeah,
not take care of as well.
that's the analogy I always use. If you're the cheapest, they're going to treat you like you're the cheapest. And that's what you're going to end up with. So you're going to end up with a bunch of demanding clients that want everything from you for the lowest price. So to your point about discovery, that's why discovery nowadays is so important. Understanding where their mindset's at, how they think, what they think is important, what they don't think is important. Understanding what your ideal customer looks like and being able to tell up front, is this a customer I even want to do business with, before I go down a rabbit hole in a bad way that I can't get out of.
All right. Well, we have Cooper in the house, and he's asking if he can ask questions. And absolutely, like this is one of those nights where 100% we are looking for questions from the audience. So yeah, glad you're here, first of all. And if you have a question, go ahead and throw that into the chat, and Matthew and I will take care of it. I think part of that race to the bottom is because a lot of the IT services that we started providing, back in the 90s and the early 2000s has largely become commoditized, right? And anytime you have a commoditization situation, it tends to drive down prices. But the problem with that is the way to drive down prices is to cut on services. And if you cut services, you're not necessarily going to provide the things that need to be provided from, especially a security standpoint, to minimize the risk for both you and your client.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's also really interesting to watch, along those lines. It used to be that IT people, and it's still partly this way, somebody's got a lawyer, someone's got an accountant, somebody's got a doctor. If they say jump, they ask how high. When IT said jump, they went, really? Is it going to cost me extra money? But I think MSPs that are starting to feel better about themselves, do proper discovery, basically put themselves on the same level with the customer rather than beneath the customer, are starting to get that same attention, because I think people forget everything about a company, everything runs on technology. If something goes down, your whole company could be, forget a breach, just in general.
Right.
Your whole company could go down, or your billing system could go down for 4 or 5 days and you're not billing. So it's interesting to me how the MSPs that have figured it out are putting themselves on the same level as, their accountants and their lawyers as far as the importance thereof. And the MSPs that are, again, doing it on price or not doing the things they need to are not taking it seriously. And I don't know about you, but if I tell a customer I need to do something to protect them and they say no, what? I just said I was going to protect. If the doctor said you needed to go to the hospital right now, would you go? We're talking about your whole business here.
Yeah.
And for some reason, if you don't position it right, they see it differently.
Yeah. It's, I think it's been very interesting to watch the separation between the commoditized IT providers and those MSPs who have started to actually build solutions that drive the bottom line at a client. And I think those are the MSPs that are really going to drive higher profitability, in my opinion, because those services, first of all, they get over the problem of just being a cost, and you're actually helping the business to grow. But second of all, it means you're really in more of a partnership rather than just being a service provider. And the way that I usually explain it is that, do you want to be a plumber or an electrician for your business clients, Or do you want to be more like the accountant or the attorney that's more of a business professional and almost a consultant to the business, right?
And the other thing I find is nowadays, more importantly than ever, and it's exactly your point, it was a commoditized product going back, way back. I need 1,000 modems with 1,000 laptops and 1,000 cases. Those were deals I typically did all the time. Well, a Targus case, and this, that, and the other thing is, that's it. That's the way it is. However, nowadays, you're selling things that are not commoditized. You're selling business outcomes. And that's the way you need to look at it. You can't look at it as I'm selling, something that everybody else is. Because if you position yourself like that, then it is what it is. As someone who is starting an MSP, I'm targeting to secure 1 to 2 clients by the end of the year. Do you think it's best to sell the tech, business outcome, or myself? I honestly think you sell the business outcome first, then yourself, and then the tech. And I'll explain why. If you're dealing with the decision maker, and most clients, unless they're 5,000 person companies and they've got IT, they don't understand tech. You can talk to them all day long about email security and vulnerability management. And I've got SOC and I've got this. And they're going to look at you and go, okay, what's the most expensive thing? Because I want to get rid of it. You're going to talk business outcome. And I'm going to throw this out there. And I talk to clients all the time about it. And I've only got a few that actually use it. Look, technology is this nowadays for an MSP. You're there to protect their people, their brand, and their profit. Their brand so it stays out of the newspaper, their people so they stay up and productive at all times, and their profits so they're not having to spend extra money on something where there was a breach or technology that's broken and stuff like that. So basically you're going in and selling, here's what I can do for your business from an IT standpoint. But they don't care about the tech.
Yeah.
It's like the example I always use is Uber. When I call an Uber, I want to get from point A to point B safely. That's what I care about. I've never put into the app, I know you can't, but I've never put in there, okay, must be a 2024 car or better. I'll only ride in a Honda. It has to be white or black. The driver has to be at least 25 or old. You don't do that because I don't care.
No, but let me carry the analogy a little bit farther. Mm-hmm. So I agree with your order of operation, by the way. So the business outcome is what the client is really going to care about, right? That's the benefit to them. But then going back to your Uber analogy, if I pull up in a broken down 2000 Mercury Grand Marquis where
they don't make fun of my Mercury,
I'm going to question whether or not I should get in that Uber.
Yes.
And that's why I think selling yourself does fit second. Because in this business, they have to trust you. Like you hold the keys to some of the most sensitive stuff in their business. And if you don't and can't sell yourself, then you really, that's something you've got to work on. Look, the tech, a lot of us, we love the tech. We got into this because we love tech. We're nerds, we're geeks. We get it, right? They don't care how the cake gets made. We care about how the cake gets made because we're into that, but they don't care. They care about the benefit to their business and can they trust you? And I think those are the two key components if you're trying to sell.
And to your point, okay, let's take it a step further. I love cake. I don't care how it's made, but there are only about 2 bakeries in this area I'll go to because the rest, I don't like the way it tastes. So that goes back to selling yourself, right? And Cooper, one of the other things you can do is I'm sure you have them, not necessarily your MSP yet, maybe, because you're starting an MSP, but I got news for you. You've had a life. You've been in IT evidently, or you wouldn't be doing this crazy venture. Tell stories. Tell stories about yourself, how you solved a problem, how you saved a customer money, how you helped them figure out something, whatever the case may be, because that's selling yourself. It's not, hi, I'm Cooper. I have a degree in blah, blah, blah. I'm starting an MSP because my hope and dream is, they don't care about that. What they care about is, who are you and what can you do for them? But stories stick. Everybody's got a favorite TV show, movie, book, characters. You can recite all the lines. Stories, for some reason, psychologically, when there's a beginning, middle, and end, our brain is attuned to remember that. So if you tell stories about how you've helped other people, how you've helped them save money, how you've helped repair something quickly, how you figured out a problem that nobody could figure out, that's going to go a long way.
Yep. So Cooper, thank you for that question. And I have absolutely a great question that I think everybody needs to have the answer to and be able to be working towards. Now, along the lines of trust, I knew I was going to bring this up. I forgot to tell you that I was going to bring this one up, but I think it's hugely important for this industry because of a lot of us who have been there, done that, and sold it and are done with owning an MSP. We built it on referrals, right? And referrals are still great because they speak to that trust side of things. But I also think that referrals are not as effective as they used to be for a number of factors. But I'd like to hear your opinion first, Matthew.
Well, trust is critical, to your point. And I'll give you an example. Like, I've been doing this 20 years, just like you have. And I've been really careful about who I am, what I say, and doing what I say I'm going to do. Because I don't want anybody to ever come back and be able to say, Matthew, you told me you'd do this and you didn't. Now, am I always good at it? Not necessarily. But if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. So I agree with you. Referrals by themselves are fantastic. But if you look at the industry and you look at, like, especially since COVID, people aren't interacting as much anymore. People aren't going to chamber events. People aren't going to different kinds of groups and stuff like that. MSPs are, but businesses as a whole are not. So it's real hard for Bob, your best customer, to say, well, I know 3 people that could use your services, because he doesn't talk to 3 people anymore, right? He talks to his customers, if that. And a lot of times, if you're talking to a decision maker, they're not even involved in the day-to-day customers. So I agree wholeheartedly that referrals used to be able to be the heart of the business. And I'm not saying for some people it isn't. If you built up a reputation over 20 years in a town, you're still going to get referrals. But referrals by itself isn't what it used to be. You're actually going to have to do some marketing and do some sales in today's world, as opposed to just relying on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Degley.
We got Degley in the house. Hey, Degley. Thought you might be at Exchange. I don't know why I scheduled a live stream on, the night after an Exchange, but hey, we're doing it. And we've actually got people here, and especially like Cooper, who is asking some great questions tonight. Now, my take on referrals is, number one, you're absolutely right. COVID changed a lot of stuff when it comes to referral type business. But I think the other dynamic that has changed is that there's a lot more competition out there that is doing some very professional marketing and sales that traditionally were not in this business, right? We didn't have really strong sales and marketing when I was doing this, right? Yeah. Because we didn't have to. It's one of the things that referrals were driving growth. And, if you were good at sales and marketing, great, you could grow faster and grow a much more valuable business. But I think a lot of people, because it just wasn't important then, they never adopted it. And all of these people who started seeing managed services as a highly profitable business to get into, who were business people first, right? They were able to come into this business with mature sales and marketing processes and eat some lunches, right? Because a lot of the MSPs were not doing anything. And so I think that changed referral dynamics a lot as well.
Yeah, I agree. And the problem is, like you said, with the business people coming in, I hate to say it because I don't literally mean this to the core of my existence, but I do mean it philosophically. if you can get someone that can run the business, truly run a business, I can find the tech.
Right.
Meaning I can go out, there are lots of people out there that are certified. I'm not saying all of them are top tier talent, by the way. So anybody listening to this, trust me. I know there are a lot of people out there that are truly above and beyond with their knowledge, they're studying, they're learning and everything. So no offense. But as a general rule, if I can run a business and I can get customers and I can bill and I can collect money and I can do all those things effectively, I can go find the help I need to make this happen. And in the past, it was the opposite, to your point. And nowadays, if you can't do those things, you can still grow. You're not going to grow as quickly and probably as big as you're capable of by not having that side of it, right? Because it goes back to people still working in the business versus on the business because they don't have enough time.
Right. Yep. So Cooper did respond to our answers around the order of operations there in terms of selling. And basically his answer is agreed. And I think coupling the tech into the business outcome, not just Microsoft Defender anti-spam policies are great, but they're great because you won't miss important client emails. And that's really just translating the tech into the outcome or the benefit.
Yep. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. All I would stay away from is using brand names they don't know. Because, for instance, a great email security tool out there are my friends at Mail Protector. However, if I look at a client and say, Mail Protector, they're going to go, and circuits, whatever, because they have no idea what the hell that means. And even when you say email security, you may even need to word it a different way. Look, one of the things I do is I secure your email, to your point. And the reason I do that is right? You're not necessarily going to go into all the components of email security. You may just say, one of the things I do is secure your email. And in doing so, here are the benefits to you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like going back to the cake analogy. Am I using Duncan Hines frosting or am I using Betty Crocker frosting? Right.
Yep.
Between the two of those, obviously there are other options for doing homemade that would have better benefits, may taste better, etc. But between those two, I don't think there's a lot of difference. And so they don't need to know that type of difference, right? They just need to know there's going to be frosting, it's going to be chocolate, and it's going to taste good.
Exactly. I mean, that's the bottom line. So you use generalities. I don't disagree with you, Cooper. I mean, you can literally talk about, I'm going to secure your email, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to secure your systems, and this is what it prevents. I'm going to make sure your stuff is backed up regularly every night. But most importantly, I've put it together so recovery can happen within 24 hours. So that means if anything ever happens to your business, I can have you up and running again with it. I mean, that's even a question to ask. As you're out there doing discovery, one of the questions I like to ask is, out of curiosity, how long could your business be down before it becomes critical? And that easily becomes how you scope their backup and recovery solution.
Right. And test their backups, because that's the other thing. If you test their backups, you can say, we know that we can restore to this point because we've already tested that backup.
Okay, I have to ask where the Deep South is. I'm in Atlanta, and I know technically that's like, physically in the Deep South, but it's more like New York and Chicago.
Well, there are pockets that we don't call the Deep South, right? Like, I'm originally from Florida. Miami is definitely so far south that it's not included in the South anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say Key West, the farthest south you can go, but it is not the Deep South.
Jackson, Mississippi counts.
But to your point, Cooper, I agree. There are those that are out there. We're talking in generalities that I think where Chambers and other communities like that used to be just popping. I knew people that were going to networking groups minimum once a week, sometimes twice a week and everything. I've seen that die down in areas significantly, but I'm glad to hear it's still rocking and rolling where you're at, because I think those are very important. That's how you build trust.
Yeah, and I really think that this is a difference not necessarily between north and south or east and west even, but more rural versus metropolitan. I think the rural areas, you're probably more likely to see tighter communities and therefore more active chambers of commerce, peer groups, networking groups, that kind of thing.
Heck, I hate to say it, but you know where the best place to get new customers is? Going to a really nice big church. Go to a really nice wealthy church. I used to go to the church with my ex-wife, and just to give you an idea, they have 12 locations, and at Christmas time, they'd spend like $6 million doing different stuff, like giving out dinners to 10,000 people and getting a group of 500 single moms together for a gourmet dinner. And then when they walked out, all the presents on their kids' Christmas list were there. The reason I say that is I'm not talking about selling to the church, though in this case, it would have been nice. There are so many business people that own really decent sized businesses or CEOs or whatever that went there. And there were all kinds of groups that you could participate in. It was a great lead gen place.
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back to that community term that I used earlier, right? Where the more you interact and engage with people, you get to know them, they get to know you, and those conversations just naturally happen. So, you and I were talking before the show about how MSPs just need to get out there and do stuff. I think you use different words that probably don't fall under the terms of service for YouTube, but and part of that is true. You have to get out there, you have to engage, and it's not something that a lot of us naturally do. Degley has chimed in with a couple of comments here. He says one thing that he recommends people do is present yourself or your company as an advisor. Absolutely true. We're talking about business outcomes being the primary force here in having somebody actually listen to you. And I think positioning yourself as that advisor goes back to, Matthew, what you and I were talking about when it comes to you have to build that trust in order to be qualified as that advisor. And again, ultimately, the point is to help them with their business operations or goals, because otherwise you're putting yourself in the bucket of commoditized IT. So Degley, thank you so much for that.
Well, and also Cooper, I'll add one more thing. We had another recording on how to do an effective discovery, which if you didn't see, I'd say go back and watch, not because it's me, but because it's got some good stuff in there that we talked about. And one of the things that's going to separate you as well is asking questions, right? Because the first thing you do in the sales process, I'm not here to sell you a damn thing. I'm here to ask you a bunch of questions to see who you are, what you think, how you think, what do you perceive as problems, what do you perceive as things that are good, all this stuff. And it's not about tech, it's a business conversation. And when you're done, what it's really going to do is, one, it's going to start to build that relationship and trust. And second of all, it's going to help let you qualify them as much as they're qualifying you to know if that's a road you want to go down. Well, what I find is when you do that, they see you have a process, that you're not coming in and going, hi, I do IT work and here are the things that I do. Even from a business outcome, I have email security and here's what it does for. Basically what you're saying is, I don't even know if I want to do business with you yet. So let's go through this process. I'm sorry, Cooper.
Well, glad to know that, those videos are driving people here for other conversations.
But doing an effective discovery really starts to build that trust and that foundation, because it's real interesting. What I found over the years is those that have a sales process and those that don't, very different outcomes. And let me explain. One is internal, how you do business and what you get out of it. But the other is external and what the customer gets out of it. They see it as very professional, right? Anybody that wants to do business with you and is serious in any way about doing it and isn't looking for the cheapest price will respect the fact that you go through a process to make sure you understand them, what their goals are, what they like, what they don't like. And you're going through that process to try to make sure you're helping them reach what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's interesting to me that things have evolved the way they have. And, you know, we were talking about formal sales processes a little bit ago. And when it comes to discovery, I think one of the more interesting ones out there that I kind of agree with is that your discovery should actually be working towards disqualifying a new client rather than trying your hardest to qualify them. Because what happens, and I think the psychology here, and you know much more about this psychology than I do, that you are being hopeful that you're going to get a new client when you're trying to qualify them. If you start from the point of view that you're looking for reasons to disqualify them, you will be more insured of getting the type of client that you want if you're looking at it as a disqualification rather than a qualification.
Agreed. So much you can't possibly know. And that's why I always tell people, you're qualifying them. You know, you are absolutely qualifying them. And don't forget it. They may not be right for you. They may not be a good customer for you. And you've got to make sure of that so you don't go down the wrong hole. And then later you're having to try to figure out a way to back out of a bad customer relationship. If you do this correctly, because the other thing is you don't want to look desperate either. I'm not desperate for your business. I really don't care if you want to do business with me. I'm not saying you say that out loud, but you're going to, I don't know. I always err on the side of making sure I state that. But yeah, you're going in to disqualify them. Let them qualify themselves to you. Let them explain to you based on your questions why you should do business with them.
Yeah.
And I promise it'll work out. I've been doing this stuff. Well, I won't say for how long because that'll age me. I've been doing this for a really long time. I started in the enterprise side of the business. And I promise this stuff works. Look, again, it used to be that you didn't need to do all this stuff in the tech industry. Hell, when I first started in enterprise, they said I walked in, they gave me the PO, I made $1 million. Have a nice day, right? Because it was a popular product. I was selling HP, IBM, whatever. But as time went on and as services evolved and hardware pricing took a dump into the 3% range, you had to learn. You had to get creative and offer a complete solution. And in that case, back in that day, the hardware got dragged behind. So I could mark the hardware up 7%, 8% when it was going for 2% because of the fact that services were there and it was a project.
Yep.
So a sales process nowadays and doing it the right way is absolutely critical nowadays in order for you to go where you want to go and get the right customers.
Yeah. Now, Cooper brings up a good point, and I think this is a good next talking point because he's talking about brand authority. Okay, so he says, "Yep, people love to talk about themselves and hear stories here. They also love brand authority. A lot of it in this market is making the customer believe you are the smart tech guy." And then he follows that up with getting in front of people here is easy. Getting them to give a damn about the technology equals not so easy. So a couple of things that I want to comment here, and then I'll let you chime in, Matthew, is that I think getting in front of people, yes, it's easier, but there's still a lot of people who don't do it. That kind of goes back to the conversation you and I were having pre-show, right? Yep. And I think, like we just said, in rural areas is probably a little bit easier. But getting them to give a damn about the technology, because it's really about the outcomes, like we've talked about previously in the show tonight. You have to marry that. You have to translate the technology to the benefit before a business person is going to give a damn about it. And then there was another point that I wanted to make about this, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but I'm getting old. So Matthew, if you want to go, you go ahead and give your opinion while I'm thinking about the other point that I wanted to make.
Well, two things. First of all, you're right. I think, how do I say this nicely? Well, I'm just going to say it because people know I'm a horrible person. I think a lot of MSPs have gotten lazy. I think they got lazy as hell and they expect customers to drop out of the sky into their lap. Or they tried marketing and then go, marketing doesn't work. Well, how long did you try it? I tried it for 90 days. Yeah, okay. Rock on with that. Or they hire a salesperson and they don't set them up for success. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is giving a damn about technology. Well, that kind of goes back to discovery. Mr. Customer, what would it look like if your network went down? What would it look like if it was down for 5 days? What effect would that have on your business? Ask them, put in their own head about their business. I mean, if they literally don't care about their own technology, literally, there's nothing you could say to them, and they're a crappy customer. But I always ask people, security's not important. Really? Okay. So, and that's what I'd ask those questions. So do me a favor, tell me, if you had to lay off half your employees tomorrow, what would that feel like? And if you ask it that way, they can't go, oh, that'll never happen. Humor me. What would it feel like? They have to have a conversation with you, and that puts them in their head about stuff. But to your point, look, if you're doing what you know are the right things, right? Security, making sure they've, got things in place or whatever, and you're not just trying to upgrade them on stuff, and they're not willing to do it no matter what you say, no matter the questions you ask, no matter how you talk to them, then they're not a good customer. They're not going to respect you anyway. You don't want them as a customer. That's the perfect customer that even if they said yes, is going to nickel and dime you on everything you do.
Right.
That's the other thing, by the way. Don't break out prices. Please do not break out prices. If you're offering them managed services, here's their price. Here's what they get. Have a nice day. Because as soon as they see the most expensive thing, whatever it is, they don't need that anymore. And if it's project work, I'll give you a little secret. Here's the customer stated problem. Here's what we're going to do to fix it. Here's the price. Done. Nothing line item down. They don't understand it. They don't care. And all they're going to do is try to shop every little component of it if you do that. Versus if you built trust and they like you, they're not going to, okay, wait, so you didn't understand my problem. You've told me how you're going to solve it. I feel comfortable with this, and here's the price. Okay. And anybody that's going to sit there and say, well, you got to break it out. I need to know every line item. That should send all kinds of spidey tingles up your back that says all they really care about is the price.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they're going to be so involved with the details that they are going to be much more time intensive, and that's just going to lower your profitability.
Now, I'll caveat that. You're dealing with an IT person. They have a Meraki environment. They want to know you're going to use Meraki. Great. We will use all Meraki equipment, this equipment, this equipment, and this equipment for this project. Done. Still not line iteming it out.
Yep.
You're just letting them know, I heard you. This is the only equipment I will use for this project.
So I remember what my second point was. And my second point was about brand authority. And I think that is something that is extremely important today that previously was driven by referrals, right? The referrals gave us brand authority when it came to the brand of the MSP. Now, I think you're fighting against other more mature marketing entities. And so you have to find other ways to get your brand out there. And I think, Cooper, you were talking about, going to chambers of commerce and things like that. I think that's great. Lunch and Learns, another great way to set yourself up as that expert, because they have to hear you communicate. They have to hear you talk about those topics that are important to them where the technology meets their business. Now, I think one of the best ways to do this is to create video content. Of course, I would, right? Because I love doing video content. but it is so easy. You carry a video camera, a darn good video camera in your pocket every day. And there are places you can post to, like the Chamber of Commerce Facebook group and your business networking Facebook group, and all these places that are local to you and where business people hang out. And that over time, it's not going to be an instant thing, but over time is going to bring that brand authority that you're talking about.
Yeah, because remember something. There are two types of marketing. And I'm sure, you know, I still don't know what does that.
It's so you have a Mac, obviously.
No, I know that. When I say that, I don't know the symbols. This is supposed to cause a rain shower. It never works. So I didn't know this caused balloons. I never figured out that this was balloons. But anyway, two types of marketing. And I know that, you know, there are going to be marketers that go, no, no, to me, all the other things go under these two headings, right? You've got brand and you've got lead gen. That's it. That's what you got. And under each one of those, there's specific activities you're going to do, and you're going to expect those results. So for instance, brand, you know, you might have a minor league baseball team in your town and you put up an ad in the outfield. Might that get you some customers? Sure, it might. But you're doing that for exposure because, again, back to the psychology, it's amazing how if someone has heard your name or your company name and you call them, how to your point, that builds brand recognition. You know what? I don't remember, but I know I've seen you before. All of a sudden in their mind, it's like, okay, I've seen you before. That's a good thing. You know, and then there's lead gen exercises. You know, then there's things that's absolutely going to get you appointments, you know, like SDR or referrals or other stuff like that. So you just have to be aware of what you're after and the activities you're going to do in each one of those to get the result you're after.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, going back to my days as an MSP, probably my best piece of awareness marketing was actually I paid to have my ad put on a park bench that was right outside the local sports bar. And, you know, kind of like Cooper, although Jackson, Mississippi is a little bit larger metropolitan area than where I was much more rural. We only had one sports bar in the town. But you know, that's where the business people went. I would bet most business people who ate out for lunch ate there almost once a week. I paid, I don't know, $300 a quarter for that ad, and it worked better than any billboard I could have ever bought.
Yep. You just have to go into it knowing what you're spending your money on and not get mad, because I've spoken to lots of MSP owners that have done X and then gone, it sucked. It didn't. Dude, that's branding. That's getting people to know you exist, get your name out there, etc. You weren't going to get 500 leads from that. You have to know what you're trying to accomplish and where you're spending your money. You know, and in some places, depending on where you're at and where your MSP is at and stuff like that, it may be, like you said, it's easy to get in front of people. So maybe it's a 70-30 split right now, branding to lead gen. You know, people need to see your name, know you're out there. And the other thing I'll say is, you know, when we talk about brand recognition and, you know, people wanting to deal with brands they know and stuff like that, it's interesting because nowadays, news for you, people go to Aldi all the time and buy stuff. It's growing like crazy. People go to Trader Joe's, and those aren't brand names anybody knows. There are a lot of people looking for that, I'll call it boutique, but that very specific type of experience. They don't want to feel like they're dealing with a big company. And there are tons of people out there like that nowadays, you know, that want that experience. Because I'll give you an example. There's an Aldi, I think it's about 15 miles from me. It's in a very wealthy area. It's one of their best performing stores. And those are no-name products. Nobody knows whose freaking names for those products.
It's a discount store.
So the reality is, you know, we're not talking about making your prices cheaper. But the reality is there are a lot of people that don't want to deal with a large corporate entity or a much larger organization. They want to deal with someone they can have a relationship with.
Yeah. And, I think the one word you used is a key word for me when it comes to how any service business differentiates itself, and that is creating the experience. And, Degley's made some really good points here as well, around, going into the discovery process with, a problem solving type of attitude, rather than I want to sell you XYZ tech. I think that's hugely important. And we've had some great comments tonight. By the way, I do want to thank Degley and Cooper for keeping the comments rolling tonight. It's exciting to see all of that going on in the chat. So I really do appreciate that. Trying to catch up to them actually, so that Matthew and I can get to any of these if there are more questions. Let's see. This comment from Degley says, then slowly with the proper budgets and resources in place, you can move them forward with the proper tool tech. Yes, absolutely. So your job as the MSP is to take their problem, tell them what it's going to take to fix it from a budget and timeline aspect. They don't need to know the ingredients, but they do need to know the budget and the timeline, and then help them proceed to get from point A to point B to solve for the risk, solve their existing pain points, and help them grow revenue.
And the other thing is, as you're growing, there's nothing wrong with taking on project work. Okay. No, whatever. However, remember, you need to build out your managed offering. And then as soon as it's feasible, convert them, because you don't want them on a project one-off basis for very long. There's a great multitude. Oh, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. And you're right. A lot of the big ones are very fat, dumb, and happy with what they got going on. So they don't. There's a huge opportunity in the space for what I'll call, I guess, SMB, but on the lower S, maybe lower M side, for a lot of MSPs that aren't after that. They want 1,000 employees and up. And you know what? If you get 25, 50-person businesses all day long, their money spends the same way.
Yeah, they're actually, in my opinion, really great customers. And I think there's a specific dynamic that has created this situation. I think as you've had MSPs get larger, in order to maintain profitability, they've had to go after larger customers. It's just the way business works. And because a service business doesn't scale well, right? Across different size customers. And that has reopened the door for smaller MSPs to serve I think that range is perfect. That 10 to 25 person business is a perfect match for.
Now, just remember something though, and it's real important. And since you're starting out, you have a jump on this. Remember to set your processes and everything else in place as you go. So that way, when you get a year into it, and it sounds like you're going to be wickedly successful, you're not having to go back and go, oh crap, now I've got to put stuff in place. So as you go along, put all these things in place. So when you get to a point that you have 20, 30 customers of this size, although some things will have to change, it's not, oh my God, I can't grow any further because I can't onboard them. I can't do this, et cetera, et cetera. So Matthew's point about them being lazy.
There is a great book, by the way, that talks about that. It's called Buy Back Your Time. And one of the tips that he gives, because this is what he used to do, is he actually used to videotape himself doing the work so that he could go back and build the processes from that. And it is so much easier to have the processes documented before you hire your first person than it is to try and do it afterwards.
Oh, I told you this before the show. I just came off a consulting gig. And it's hysterical to me because of what I'm learning, not anybody else, that I didn't go back to the hotel every night and type up all my notes where I could just piece it together at the end and go here. I took all kinds of handwritten notes and I waited till I got home, and now I'm spending in between time 4 days putting it together. Trust me, that ain't happening again. My new process will be put in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And several comments about the processes and stuff like that. Now we do have a couple more people have joined the show. Matthew, I know that it's 8 o'clock, and normally we end these at 8 o'clock because Uncle Marv comes on at 8. But we do have a little extra time if you do. And we have some more people. So if more people would like to ask some questions, we'd certainly be open to that. We're talking mostly about sales and marketing type stuff tonight, but both Matthew and I have been in here long enough to kind of see it all. So we can
say between us 120 years.
No, but probably half of that.
Yeah.
Between the two of us.
Yep.
I mean, what? It's 2025, and I've been doing this since 92 officially.
Yeah, I've been doing it since about 93-ish because I didn't go right into the tech industry.
Yeah. So, and if you're talking unofficially, when I was actually taking money and my mother was having to drive me to appointments.
Oh, there you go.
There
you go.
All right. So Degley wants you to sell him this pen.
Okay, dude. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Everybody thinks this is like a hard thing, and it's this, and you'd be amazed how many salespeople get tricked up with this because I do this in my interview process. And what's funny is I love how many people go, okay, I'll sell you this pen. So this is a smooth writing paper mate pen. It's called the Profile Ball. It's blue, and I will stop the process as soon as they go. So Matthew, in today's technology age, I find a lot of people like to take notes with their laptop. They like to take notes on their iPad and stuff like that. Do me a favor. How much do you actually use a pen? As soon as they do that, we're done. If they don't quite do that, then we go on to the next step, which is, something along the lines of, okay, so you use it a little bit on and off. What kinds of things do you use the pen for? Are you in front of customers? Are you only internal? Do you take notes? Do you sign contract? What do you use the pen for? It's amazing how many sales reps that claim they're consultative don't do that and start trying to sell you a pen, and it drives me batshit because they're like, well, it's a commodity product. I'm like,
anyhow, it appears I was wrong, by the way, about Uncle Marv and tonight's show. He does have a show going on because I just got the notification that his show has started. But I did say we would take extra questions, so I'm going to leave it open for a couple of more minutes to see if there are any more questions. But while we're doing that, Matthew, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody how they can get involved with Nodeware, how they can find out more information, how they can find you, possibly on LinkedIn, maybe, and that kind of stuff.
Well, my phone number, no, I'm kidding. From a Nodeware standpoint, all you got to do is reach out to me at matthew.koenig at igicyberlabs.com. And we're happy to set you up with a demo. It's quick. It's easy. There's no pressure. If you love it, great. You can try it. If you don't, you can say, Matthew, you're an idiot. Why'd you waste my time? So that's really easy and straightforward. Hello, I'm late. Really, Craig? We didn't notice.
Well, he wouldn't be late if Uncle Marv hadn't started his show, because then he could stay on longer.
As far as me, if you have any questions about anything we talked about tonight or whatever like that, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. Just DM me. You can find my profile pretty easily, and I'm happy to discuss anything and, kind of go from there.
Awesome. Well, we didn't get any more questions. We just got the note from Craig saying that he was late. And And I guess, like, I don't want to step on Uncle Marv's toes. We kind of have this friendly gentleman's agreement that we won't, cross over each other's shows. Although at some point we are going to do another crossover show where we do a full 2 hours of Uncle Marv and me.
Can't wait.
If you can stand that long. It usually turns into quite the Florida Man episode, actually. So I am going to go ahead. And what stinks is more people have joined since we started saying that we were going to shut this down. So if you have more questions about sales, feel free to reach out to me, reach out to Matthew. We'd love to talk to you, love to talk about this stuff all day long. We would talk about it all night if Uncle Marv hadn't started his live stream. But, we want to be respectful to Uncle Marv. So, Matthew, thank you so much for providing the information tonight. Thank you, Cooper, Degley, Craig, everybody who joined tonight. We really do appreciate you joining us, and we will see you in the next one. Hey, thanks for watching All Things MSP Live. You can reach me, Eric Anthony, at eric@allthingsmsp.com. If you're a guest, if you're a vendor, if you want to sponsor the show, let me know.